friends, it is Jenna, what is up, and welcome back to the Board Game Garden, and welcome to the monthly mechanism video, which if you guys do not know, every single month of 2025, I'm going to be going through my favorite games of a specific mechanism, and also that was the mechanism that we as a community focused on in that past month. So in May, we focused on dice placement, dice manipulation, dice drafting, just any game that uses dice in a cool way. Aside from like roll and writes, I didn't really include that in this list because I do have a separate mechanism focus of roll and writes or verb and writes, whatever you want to call them. So yes, today we're going to be going through all of my favorite dice games that use dice in cool ways. I have discovered that this is probably my top favorite. I don't think I listed it as my top favorite in my like top 12 favorite mechanisms. But I think going through all of the games that have this mechanism and just how freaking hard it was to rank these and figure out what games I wanted to include in this list, this has been the hardest one thus far to rank because there are so many games that are like amazing with this kind of mechanism of using dice in cool ways. A lot of them are like dice drafting and dice worker placement. And there's some that are like dice manipulation. But yes, I am so excited to get into this list. If you guys are interested in hearing all about the games or my favorite games with this mechanism, then just keep on watching. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy. Also, hit that subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. Without further ado, let's get into my top 10 favorite dice games. I'm just gonna say dice games. Let's get into it, shall we? All right, so quickly before we get into the top 10 that I have around me here, I do want to list off some honorable mentions because like I said, this list was almost impossible to figure out what games to include. There are a lot of games with this mechanism that I've played once or twice that I have really enjoyed, and I want to play more, and I just haven't played in a while. So these are some honorable mentions of some that I have just played once or twice. One is Galileo Galilei. This one is coming from, I think, Capstone Games. It's being brought over. I think it's already been released in Europe, but it's coming over to North America. Very excited about that one. I played it at Breakout Con this past year, and it was fantastic. And it was my favorite game of that month, which I think was March, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Galileo Galilei, fantastic. Another one that I need to get back to the table is Civolution. This is one by Stefan Feld. Another one that I will mention now is the Castles of Burgundy, which is my favorite game. And yes, it does have a like dice mechanism, but for some reason, when I think of the Castles of Burgundy, I just think of tile laying. So you guys will see it in my monthly or the month where we focus on tile laying. But yeah, Civolution is another one by Stefan Feld. It's his newest one, and he does some really cool things with dice in that game where you are taking 2 dice and using it for a worker placement action. There's so many different actions of the different dice combinations. Such a cool game, such a big game, but it's one that I really want to get back to the table. Another one is Korra Rise of an Empire. This is one that I played once with my friends. I think it was like late last year, and I want to play this game so bad again. It has a really cool dice mechanism where you have these different numbered cards, and then you're going to be rolling your dice, and then you're going to be applying those dice to those different cards, which are different actions. There's also a little bit of card play in that one as well, with some like tableau building of some like endgame cards and ongoing ability cards and stuff like that. And then lastly, for honorable mentions, actually no, there are 2 more. One is Genotype, which it is right here. I almost put this one on the list, but it's been too long since I've played this one, and I do remember really enjoying it, but I don't remember like the gameplay a lot, so I need to get that one back to the table because I did really enjoy it. It has some really cool dice drafting, and the dice aren't your typical like numbered dice. They have like different icons, and you're trying to get the different icons in order to grow your pea plants, and I really enjoy that one. So Genotype, really want to get that one back to the table. And then lastly, for honorable mentions, I wanted to mention Mercurial, which is a very fun, super cool game where it's very like engine building in a way, because you're working up these or building up these cards, and those cards are going to give you actions of manipulating your dice, and then eventually you're going to have the different dice with the different icons in order to set off these spells, which are spell cards that need specific dice and icons and stuff for those. So very fun game, another one that I've only played once and I really want to get back to the table. I actually want to try that one solo. So yes, that one, really looking forward to playing that one more. But those are all of the honorable mentions. Apologies that I had to do that, but there are just way too many games that have some really cool dice mechanisms that I love. So yes, let's get into the actual top 10 now. All right, starting off with number 10, this is a classic, another one that I have not gotten to the table in a while, and I really need to. I have both of the expansions for this game. We have a bunch of like promos for this game, and it is such a cool game with a lot of variability in it as well. But the game that I'm talking about and my number 10 is Roll Player. I have this gorgeous, like, I don't even know if it's like the fancy deluxeified version of it, but I absolutely love Roll Player. This is one that Francis also enjoys a lot, and we have not gotten it back to table in a bit. So this is one that I want to get back to the table soon. Maybe I'll ask Francis if he wants to play it. But basically in Roll Player, you are building up your own D&D character by drafting dice and then placing those dice into the board in specific ways in order to score victory points based off of the colors of the dice, the placement of where you put them in the specific colors. Also, each of the rows needs to be a specific number added up with all the pips, and it is all about, like I said, building up your D&D character, having those specific stats. And then also a fun part of the game is the fact that wherever you place the die, the different rows then allow you to activate different actions that will allow you to manipulate the dice and move the dice. Additionally, there is a market of cards that you're going to be building up around your board as well, with like different armor and spells and different things like that. Additionally, like I said, I do have the Friends and Familiars expansion, I think that's what it's called. And then I have the Monsters and Minions expansion as well, which I haven't played the Friends and Familiars. I still don't know if that's actually what it's called, but I haven't played that one yet, but I have played the Monsters and Minions ones, and that one is very fun, where it kind of gives you something that you're working towards, because at the end of, I think, every round, you're going to be going against monsters, and that's kind of what you are building up your character in order to do. Actually, maybe it's not at the end of every round. Maybe it's like at the end of the game. You're building up in order to fight a monster. So you have specific things that you are working towards with your D&D character in order to defeat that monster. So yes, Roll Player is wonderful. That is why I wanted to add it to the list. I almost didn't because it has been quite a while since we played it, but I just remember having so many good experiences with this one. And like I said, it's one that I need to get back to the table. So that is my number 10 Roll Player. Number 9 is a game that I actually don't have physically, and this is one that I have wanted to add to the collection for a bit. And the game that I'm talking about is Woodcraft. So this is a game by, I think it's Vladimir Suchi, and it's published by Rio Grande Games. And this one uses dice in such a cool way, and it is so satisfying to me. I actually recently played this one again. I played it for the first time like over a year ago, and I enjoyed it, but the second time that I played it just recently, it just, it hit different, and it was so good, and it really made me want to seek out a copy of this one. So yeah, basically in Woodcraft, you are woodland elves, I believe, constructing different wood things. You are a wood crafter, and basically the dice that you're going to be drafting are the pieces of wood that you're going to be using in order to construct those things. And you can glue dice together in order to add up the pips. You can chop dice in half to kind of divide the pips. And you're doing this because you have different contracts that you're trying to fulfill that are going to need specific dice color, which is the type of wood, as well as the dice numbers in order to fulfill that contract. Additionally, you might need some different resources like glue and metal metal and different things like that, but your primary thing is that you're going to try to be getting these different pieces of wood, dice that are going to help you fulfill these contracts. You also have this board that you have the roof that you're collecting tools in order to get more rewards, and then you also have the middle area of your board that is going to be your different assistants that are going to give you ongoing abilities and endgame abilities and stuff like that. And there is a little bit of like a real-time aspect to it, I guess, where you get a contract in every round that you can't fulfill that contract. It's going to be going down until it gets to the bottom. If you're not able to fulfill it by that time, it is actually negative victory points. And yeah, woodcraft is fantastic. Again, one that I really want to add to the collection. There are quite a few in this list that are games that I've just wanted to add to the collection for so long, and I just need to do it. But I really do need to go through my current collection, see what ones I can get rid of in order to make room for these ones that I feel like will just be in my collection for a long time because I absolutely love them. But anyways, that is my number 9, woodcraft. Moving on to number 8. This is one of my comfort games. I really need to get this one back to the table as well. That's something that I'm going to be saying over and over again in this video. Whenever I do these, I really actually enjoy doing these lists of going through specific mechanisms because it really makes you remember all of these games that maybe you haven't gotten to the table in a while, and it just makes me remember all these fantastic games that I have in my collection. But the game that I'm talking about in my number 8 is Creature Comforts. This game, like I said, is one of my comfort games. It is by KTBG, or Kids Table Board Gaming. It is a fairly simple game, but it is, like I said, a comfort game, so the rules are easy to remember. This is one that I could get back to the table and I could easily remember all the rules after not playing it for a while, which I appreciate. I do not love going back to a game that I've played before and not remembering the rules. But yes, in Creature Comforts, you are playing as a family of animals, trying to have your home be as cozy as possible and building up your home to be as cozy as possible before the winter hits. So you're like preparing for the cold weather. And I just think it is absolutely adorable. I love the game mechanism. Basically, each player is going to have their own personal dice that they roll, and then there's going to be the town dice, which are the communal dice that each player on their turn is going to be able to use. And you're going to be using those dice on different worker placement spots, and each worker placement spot is going to need specific numbers, whether that is, you know, adding them up or specific numbers on dice. And basically you're going to, on your turn, place down all your workers on these specific spots, and then you're going to be using your personal family dice that you knew of, and then also the town dice that were rolled after the fact. And then you're going to fulfill these different worker placement spots with those dice. If you're not able to do that, you do get this little like band-aid token that kind of helps you in a next round. But yeah, you're doing that to get different resources, and those resources are going to help you get different cards to add to your home and make it cozier, different things like that. So overall, Creature Comforts is one of my favorite games, and like the title says, it's very comforting, very cozy, and that is why it is my number 8, which I will also mention that KTBG, or Kids Table Board Gaming, does have another dice game that I think uses dice in a really cool way, and that is Diced Veggies. That is another one that I want to play. I think they recently, or like the newer printings of Diced Veggies has a solo mode in it, so I want to try the solo mode for Diced Veggies. But that one is very fun. It is using dice in a crazy way, where basically you have this little cleaver knife and you're like chopping different kind of groups of dice off in order to fulfill these different food contracts that are going to need specific dice colors or specific food items. Diced Veggies is definitely one that I wanted to just quickly mention as well. I'm like kind of cheating in this list by mentioning other games with games, but guys, there are so many good dice games. But yeah, Creature Comforts is my number 8. Number 7 is a slightly more recent release. This one was released, I think, in 2023, and I really enjoy this one multiplayer, and I need to play this one again solo, but my number 7 is The White Castle. So The White Castle is published by DeVere, and this is one of their like smaller box games, and this game carries a lot of punch in a very small box. And this one is just the epitome of a dice worker placement game, and I really, really enjoy that part of the game. It's a large part of the game, but basically you have a bunch of different bridges that are going to have dice on them, and each bridge is a different color. So you have the red, the black, and the white. Additionally, there is the matcha expansion that adds a green bridge as well with the green dice, but you're going to be drafting one of the dice off of one of those bridges. Then you're going to be placing it into one of the worker placement spots that basically you have to pay money or you get money based off of the difference of the pip numbers. So there's going to be a pip number that is printed on the board. So if it was like a 1 and I placed a 4 die on it, I would gain 3 coins because the 4 was 3 more than the 1. But if the dice that you place on is less than the pip number that is already there, you're going to then have to pay money to go to that spot. And then based off of the color of the die, each worker placement spot has specific actions that you can do based off of that color. Then you'll do that action, and there are a bunch of different spots that are going to get you victory points in different ways. And the big part of this game is the fact that you only have 9 turns. You do get 12 turns with the matcha expansion, which is nice, but you really have to try to get as much done as possible and chain actions as much as possible in the game because you only have those 9 turns. So yeah, that's a big part of the game, and I really, really enjoy the matcha expansion. I recently got that one. I think it was at PAX Unplugged this past year. But yeah, it adds just a little bit more to the game. It doesn't really change too much. It just adds more of what you already have in the game. It just gets you some more worker placement spots and some more opportunities for that chaining. So yes, that is my number 7, the White Castle. And I do quickly want to mention the other game from Devere in the same size box that is also a dice game, and that is the Red Cathedral. This is one that, again, I've only played once, and I really need to get this one back at the table because I remember enjoying it a lot. It has dice movement. It's like a dice rondelle, which I think is very cool, and you're trying to build different parts of this Red Cathedral. And I do remember really enjoying it in that one game that I played, so I do need to play this one again, but I did want to quickly mention that one because it is from the same publisher and both are very, very fun. So yes, that is the White Castle and the Red Cathedral. But the White Castle is my number 7. Moving on to my number 6. This is again another one that I do not have physically and one that I've almost purchased multiple times because I just need to get this game into my collection. I've played this game multiple times and I absolutely love it every single time that I play it. But my number 6 is Rajas of the Ganges. This is a slightly older game, but it's one that, like I said, I've played quite a few times, and it is a dice worker placement game where basically everyone has different dice that they're going to roll. There are different colors, and there's going to be a bunch of different kind of mini game areas on the board that you're going to be able to place those dice in order to do different things. So there's the river that you can use dice in order to move up the river to get different actions or different rewards. You also have different worker placement spots of these different people or different assistants that are going to let you do different things. You also have this area where you can sell goods, and the goods are going to be the different tiles that you've added to your board, which is another worker placement spot where you're going to draft these different tiles that you're going to add to your main board, that you're trying to create different paths and also add different like production to your board, which is the selling of the goods and stuff like that. And there is like another area where you can exchange different dice for different colors because you might need specific colors for specific actions. But the main part of Raja of the Ganges is the fact that you have 2 different tracks that you're going up, and one is going to be money and the other is fame or popularity. I think it's fame. But basically you're trying to go up those 2 tracks and you're trying to be the person that crosses those 2 paths first. You're not necessarily going to be the person that wins if you do it first, but basically whoever does it first will trigger the end of the game, and then at the end of the game it's whoever has crossed the paths most will be the winner. But yes, overall I have enjoyed the many plays that I've had of Rajas of the Ganges, and like I said, I do really need to get it into the collection eventually. The only thing is that it doesn't have a solo mode, but I'm assuming there's like a fan-made solo mode or something. But yes, that is my number 6, Rajas of the Ganges. All right, getting into the top 5. So the first one that I want to talk about in my number 5 is a more recent one that I have fallen in love with. This was, I believe, my number 3 game or number 2 game of 2024. But the game that I'm talking about, it is very heavy, is Minos Dawn of the Bronze Age. So this is a game by Board and Dice, and this is, I think, by Stan Kordonsky? Yes, it is Stan Kordonsky, but this one, like I said, is one that I recently have fallen in love with. I played it for the first time, I think late last year, and then I've played it multiple times since then, and this one is a lot. There's a lot going on in this game, but the main part of this game that I absolutely love is the dice mechanism in this game. You are going to be dice drafting, so there's going to be a bunch of dice that are going to be rolled. There are 4 different colors of dice. There is the gray, which is a wild. There's also red, yellow, and blue, so the 3 primary colors. And you're going to be drafting a die on your turn and then placing it into one of 5 different worker placement spots, and each of those 5 worker placement spots has 3 spots for people's dice. And in order to kind of determine whose dice is whose, you do have a little like thing that you place the dice into that is your player color, and then you place it out onto that worker placement spot, and you're going to place it, and then I always forget if it's ascending or descending, but basically if someone else places a die in that same worker placement spot, it is going to push yours. And like I said, it's either ascending or descending, and each of the worker placement spots is doing the same action, but the ones more to the right are slightly weaker than the ones to the left. So you're trying to kind of push other people's dice over in order for them to get a lesser reward. And sometimes, as the player that placed that die down, you are hoping that people push because maybe you don't want to do that action as many times as where you placed it. So yes, there's that part, but then there's also the really cool dice mechanism where basically after everyone has placed down their dice, you're going to look at the different colored dice that you have placed, which I believe you place a total of 4 down. I could be wrong, it might be 5. I think it's 4. But basically you're going to add up the same colored dice, and the gray ones you can apply to one of the colors. And then if you are able to have dice add up to, I think it's 8 or 9 of a certain color, you're going to be able to bump up on that specific track. So there are 3 different tracks, a red, blue, and a yellow track. And as you go up, they're going to give you ongoing abilities, also some like right away rewards that you can gain, and also some end game stuff as well. So for example, if I had 2 dice that were red and they added up to 9, I'd be able to bump up once on the red track, then that would give me something. There is also some card play with some playing of cards, and then you can get some right away ability, and then you tuck those cards for some ongoing abilities as well. So there is a little bit of like multi-use cards in this game as well. So you can tell why I enjoy this game so much, because it really does incorporate a lot of mechanisms that I really enjoy. Another thing that I wanted to mention with the dice mechanism is the fact that then when you start playing your turns and activating those different actions, you're going to be able to do 1 action per turn, and you have to do them in the order of your dice, starting from your highest die to your lowest die. So you really have to pay attention to what actions you are placing and what the die number is, because you're going to have to perform the dice in a specific order, and you might need something for a specific action that you will get from another action. So you really have to pay attention to the order of your actions and what order they will be played in order to get the specific things that you might need for those actions. So yeah, I could talk about this game for so long. Additionally, there's like some area majority with this map in the center, which is not like one of my favorite parts of the game, but it is very fun and adds to the game as well. But yeah, the dice mechanism in this game is so cool, and I absolutely love that part of the game. So yeah, that is why Minos Dawn of the Bronze Age is my number 5. Moving on to number 4. So this is a game that I feel like is slept on way too much. I do not hear many people talking about this game, and if you have not checked out this game, you need to. It is fantastic. I recently played it again. I think I've played this game maybe like 3 or 4 times, and every single time that I've gotten it back to the table, I remember why I like it so much. But the game that I am talking about is The Magnificent. And this one is a dice drafting game, but then you're using the dice in order to do different actions of cards that you have in front of you. You're going to start with 4 action cards, and you're going to be drafting a die on your turn, and then placing that die onto one of your 4 action cards, and then getting some sort of reward for that action card, and then choosing one of the three main actions, which is building, performing, and traveling. And another part of this game is the fact that it has like polyomino tiles. Basically, you are a circus or a performance act, and you are performing these different acts and then also building up your facilities of your circus act. And I really enjoy the combination of the dice drafting as well as the polyomino tiles. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, you're getting these different tiles that are your different buildings, and you're placing them onto your personal board in order to gain victory points. And then also each of the different performances that you're going to need to perform need specific tiles and specific buildings in order to perform those in. So you have the different cards up above. And then obviously the main part of this video is the dice mechanism. And the dice mechanism in this game is really cool because, like I said, you're drafting one die. There's going to be a bunch of dice that are rolled, kind of like Minos, Dawn of the Bronze Age. And there are 4 different colors again. There are purple, green, and orange. And there's also clear dice, which are the wild dice. So you're going to be drafting one of those dice and then placing it onto one of your action cards. That action card is going to give you some sort of bonus for that specific die, or it's going to give you some sort of resource, something like that. And then with that die, you are going to be doing one of the 3 actions, which is building, like I said, performing, or traveling. And then depending on the color of the die and the pip number, that's going to determine the strength of your action as well as the color of your action. So like when you're building, it'll determine the tile color that you're going to get. When you're traveling, it'll determine the different travel kind of circle that you're going to be traveling on in order to get certain resources. But then with those dice, as you draft more of the same colored die, they actually add together. So you are incentivized to draft the same colored die because then you'll be able to do stronger and stronger actions. But at the end of the round, once you have drafted those 4 die, you're going to have to pay money equal to your highest total of a certain color. So if I had the most pip value of the orange dice that I drafted, I would have to pay a certain amount based off of the pips on those dice. And then you also do have to pay for any clear die that you draft as well. So you really have to pay attention to the dice that you're drafting, the numbers that they're going to be, and how many coins you're going to have to pay at the end of the round, because you'll lose victory points if you're unable to pay with the money. So yeah, I just love this game. Like I said, I just recently got this one back to the table. I taught it to a group of friends and it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. So that is why the Magnificent is my number 4. So my number 3 on this list is the last one that I do not have physically, and clearly I need to get it because it is number 3 on this list, which is crazy. But again, this is one that doesn't have a solo mode, and I often really hesitate buying games if they don't have a solo mode because I have a lot of games and most of the time I cannot get these games to the table that often. So I never want to buy a game that is just going to sit on the shelf, but I do know that I really enjoy this one. But a lot of my friends that I do play games with have this one and they really enjoy it as well. So I do get to play it quite often. But the game that I'm talking about in my number 3 is Coimbra. This is such a fantastic game, and every time someone says, hey, do you want to play Coimbra? I will 100% play it. It is such a fantastic game. Basically, it is another dice drafting game, very much so like the Magnificent, as well as Minos, where there's going to be a bunch of dice that are rolled, and then on your turn, you're going to draft one of those dice. You have these little like castle pieces of your color that you can place your die into, and then you're going to be placing that die into one of 4 different rows, and that is going to determine the row of cards that you want to draft from. And then I think it's the person that places the highest number drafts first. Aside from one of the rows, it's whoever places the lowest die that gets to draft a tile instead of a card. But then the cards that you draft, whatever card you draft, that is going to go into a tableau, and there's going to be different cards that give you different automatic abilities, ongoing abilities, endgame abilities. And then also at the end of the round, after you've finished drafting these different dice, depending on the dice that you drafted, those are the different colored tracks that you're going to be going up. It kind of, talking about it, reminds me a little bit of Minos in a way. I think I have seen a little bit of comparison between the two, But yeah, I just love the combination of the dice drafting and the tableau building. And then also one of the tracks that you're going to be going up is going to allow you to move your person on this map, and that's going to give you different rewards and different endgame stuff and different ongoing abilities. So yeah, overall Coimbra is just a fantastic game. From the first time that I played it to the last time that I've played it, it's just been one that I have really enjoyed, and honestly have no idea why it is not in my collection already. So yes, that is my number 3, Coimbra. All right, so moving into my top 2, this number 2 is one that I have been obsessed with recently. I recently played this one on a solo live stream, and it was so much fun solo. And honestly, I can see this one going up even higher on this list, possibly to my number 1, which is pretty crazy because my number 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. So yeah, this one is fantastic. It is my number 2, and it is Grand Austria Hotel, which, like I said, I did a solo playthrough of this one, so I will put the live stream up here if you want to go and check that out. I did play the Emperor track slightly wrong, so I did win that game by a lot, and I'm pretty sure that I still would have won it, but just by slightly less, just to let you guys know. But I do know how to do the Emperor track now for sure. But yeah, Grand Austria Hotel is a fantastic game with dice drafting, again, where a bunch of dice are rolled, and then depending on the number, they're going to be placed into different columns, and those are going to be specific actions that you're going to perform. And based off of how many of that dice are in that action spot, so how many 6s are rolled or how many 2s are rolled, you're going to be able to perform that action at that specific strength. So if there are 3 2s on the 2 action, I would draft one of those 2s, and then I'd be able to perform that action at a strength of 3 because there were 3 dice there before I drafted. And basically you're running a hotel. You are bringing in different guests into your restaurant. They are needing specific food and drinks, so you're going to be getting those, feeding them and giving them drinks, coffee, wine. And then once they have been fed, you'll be able to place them into a hotel room, but you have to, before that, prepare the hotel rooms for them. And then they are going to be placed into the hotel rooms. And each of the guests are going to give you something when you do place them into their room. And based off of the different groups of rooms that you have completed and checked guests into, you're going to be getting different rewards for those. You also have staff members that you're going to be able to hire with one of the 6 different actions in order to get ongoing abilities and instant abilities and endgame scoring. And then there's also the Emperor track that you're going to be moving up, and you have to get to a certain spot in order to avoid negative things from happening, and there are some public objectives and different things like that, and I just could not get over this game. It is so stinking good. I do think that it ended up being in like my top 20 games of all time, which, speaking of my top games of all time, the cream of the crop, I need to start thinking about doing that again, because I think last year I ended up doing it in like July? That's in a month. That is okay. Anyways, that is my number 2 for this list, Grand Austria Hotel. And lastly, my number 1 game in this list, my favorite dice game. This is not going to be any surprise to anybody. That is Wayfarers of the South Tigris, which I do think currently this is my number 3 favorite game of all time, which I do want to mention the other 2 in this trilogy, which is Scholars of the South Tigris as well as Inventors of the South Tigris. If I could put all 3 of them in this number 1 spot, I definitely would. Wayfarers is my favorite out of the 3, but I do really enjoy the other 2 as well. And they all use dice in such cool ways. Wayfarers of the South Tigris specifically is one that I really enjoy. I love the dice mechanism in this game, where basically you're going to have dice workers. You're going to start, I think, with 3 dice, and then you can eventually get a 4th and a 5th die. But you're going to roll all those dice, and then you can actually kind of customize each of the different pip numbers in this little caravan area, where you're going to be adding different tiles, and that's going to allow you to, like I said, customize each of the pip numbers for those dice workers. So you can customize what your ones are going to be able to do, and you can customize what your twos are going to be able to do. And basically you're building up a tableau of these cards that are going to end up being your worker placement spots, and each of those worker placement spots are going to need specific icons in order to do them. Some don't, but a lot of them do need specific icons, whether that is a boat icon or a camel icon or a telescope icon. I always forget what that thing's called. And basically with those tiles, you can add them into your caravan in order to allow specific numbers to be able to be placed in specific spots. Cannot get over how cool that mechanism is. Also in Scholars of the South Tigris, you can like mix different colors together in order to allow you to do different actions for different colors. So if you placed a yellow and a red die together, you'd be able to perform an orange action. I think that is such a cool mechanism in Scholars of the South Tigris, and definitely my favorite thing about that game. And then also in Ventures of the South Tigris, you are brightening dice, which I think is a really cool mechanism as well, where you can like upgrade the dice in order to be able to use them for better actions. So yeah, love that as well. But overall, Wayfarers of the South Tigris is my favorite out of the trilogy. It is just such a fantastic game. This is another one that I played recently again. I've been able to play a lot of like my favorite games recently, which is making me really, really happy. The only bad thing about that is it is now the end of May, and I don't know if I played a lot of new games in May, and I typically for my monthly videos do like my top 10 favorite games of the month. So my top 10 favorite games of May might be a little bit different, and I might have to just talk about games that I've already talked about before because I played a lot of games that I've already played and already talked about on the channel. But there are some that I played that were new, that were really good. But anyways, that is my number one favorite game that uses dice in cool ways. That is Wayfarers of the South Tigris. All right, friends, so that is going to be everything for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up. Also, hit that subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. Please leave some of your favorite games that use dice in cool ways down in the comment section. I'm sure there's going to be a ton down there that I have played and games that I, really enjoy as well. And please remind me of all of those wonderful games down in the comment section so I can get them back to the table. I can just think of so many games that use dice in cool ways. But yeah, definitely let me know some of your favorites down in the comments. I love you guys so, so much. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye, friends.